Ah. What up, everybody? Steve the Science Guy here. Today we're going to talk about reading research. I wore the hat to make a point, but all jokes aside, I think it's actually something that is really important to talk about because a lot of people don't talk about it. So there's a lot of individuals out there who are very well versed and educated and know how to read research. And so they kind of are more than happy to decipher it and give their opinions and give their outlook on what it says. But as for teaching people how to read research, I haven't seen a lot out there on it. And so this might be a kind of dry topic, but for those of you who really want to dig in and fact check some of the stuff that you're reading and some of the things that you're going over, you're learning about as you're doing your own digging in and investigations, this is very, very important. What sparked this for me was watching the movie What the Health. Now, I don't want to get into what I thought about the movie, other than the fact that I do believe a lot of research was misinterpreted, and the idea of some of the research that they were trying to get across was very poorly communicated, either taken out of context, or it was one study that was 40 or 50 years old, whatever the case may be. So I want to give you the ability and to go back and to fact check for yourself and sort of decipher your own decisions on what you think, if maybe you've seen the movie, or really if, say, you've seen something online, or just you want to be able to go in and make sure that it's really saying what they're claiming that it's saying. The first thing that I always look at, and this is anybody, you always look at the abstract first. It's what you see. So one of the first things that you want to look at is how many people were in the study. Normally, you want to have at least a set number of people in the study. If you see a number like 6 or 8, that's probably pushing it. Granted, for a lot of the metabolic studies and for exercise studies, it can be very difficult to recruit subjects. So if the research design was good, and if the p-values were good, there was significant difference found in everything, it might not be a bad study. It is much harder to show significance in a smaller population than in a larger population. That being said, it's, for those of you who are just starting, it's easier to look for studies that have a better population. The larger the population, the more carryover it's going to have to actual said population, right? We're looking at the abstract. The number of participants looks good. Okay, sweet. Now look at what the study is sort of saying. What is the abstract saying, the claim that it's making? So if the claim is relevant to what you're looking for or against, then we want to start looking deeper into the research, deeper into the study design, and how they went about things. Normally when you're looking for a study at health, there has to be some sort of determinant of health. Whether that be blood lipids, triglycerides, cholesterol, that sort of thing, fasting blood glucose, so diabetes markers, body weight, blood pressure, hypertension. Those are all objective measures of health. They are health markers and health indicators. Blood A1C is another one. So there's a lot of them. So when you're looking at methods, you want to look at two things. One, did they test at baseline? And then 2, did they test afterwards to the same markers? The reason this is important is because we have to prove that there was actually something that happened. Right? This is a very, very simple one. And we want to make sure that they're testing in the correct manners that are still going to breed accurate results in regards to those health markers. The second thing you need to be looking for in the methods is how did they set up the study. So if, for instance, you are proposing that a certain diet type is going to be of large health benefit to all of the individuals in the study, and all of the individuals in the study are sedentary, they don't exercise at all, so they do zero exercise. Their calorie rate intake is probably going to vary. So you have to account for that. You have to see where their calorie intake is at. Because if you get a lot of people that are eating 3,500 calories a day doing nothing, and you take them down on a diet to 2,000 calories a day doing nothing, you're obviously going to see, there's no question that you will see weight loss. So obesity markers are going to, that's a super easy one. When you're looking at weight, you want to look at things like body fat measurement. BIA is often used, but has, in the literature, a 7.5 error percentage. So things that would be better, the gold standard would be like a DEXA or a hydrostatic weighing. Bod Pod is similar to hydrostatic weighing, but with air, so that's also a good one. You also have caliper testing, which is fine. It's a 3.5 error percent. And then there's also another form that is similar to that, but it is ultrasound. So these are all better options for testing body fat and body composition than something like the BIA or the bioelectrical impedance. And the way that they measure that is important, because if the BIA has a 7.5% error ratio, that means that anything within 7.5% of what they're actually at is in the range. So it could be 7.5% over at the beginning of the study, and then error 7.5% under on the end of the study. So even just that error change right there could be no change in the actual individual, but that error change would have a very significant finding in the study. The details are important. On top of that, say we put them on this diet, so we've cut them calorically, right? So we know that we're going to see a change in body fat and body weight. Simply because, for example, in this study, we might have cut 1,500 calories a day out of their diets. Now, if all they do is that's all they change is they cut the diet and they change that, then we can look at that. But, say they added exercise. Well, then now we cannot attribute anything or everything to just that diet. So we need to look at what exactly it is. Because if these individuals are making lifestyle changes, such as exercise and diet, we need to look at the lifestyle changes as a whole. We can no longer garner all of the evidence or all of the outcome to one single factor. The methods is probably going to be one of the most important parts, because it's going to show you how they set up that study and whether or not it's actually going to be legitimate. After that, you need to make sure that what they're looking at is what you're actually looking for. If you're looking for improvements in health and they're doing VO2 max, it doesn't quite correlate. You can say that their fitness level has increased, but it doesn't necessarily mean that their overall health is increased. Now, if you want to look at overall health and look at things like obesity, we know obesity is a huge risk factor. Waist-hip circumference is another big risk factor. Body fat percentage, big risk factor. Hypertension, resting blood glucose, blood triglycerides. These are all, like, if you're looking at health, very good things to be looking at for what are we measuring. Because if we're measuring VO2 max, that would be a much better, really I wouldn't even argue that that's not the best indicator of performance, but that would be more associated with a performance measurement. Like, how good is this person going to perform? So those are things that you want to look at in terms of what are they testing to make this claim. You also want to look at the population. So what does the population look like that has started this study? If you're a reasonably healthy adult and we see a population of morbidly obese patients starting a dietary and exercise intervention, and so your diet is already reasonably good, right? It's reasonably healthy. You include nutrient-dense foods. You have lots of veggies. You're getting all your micronutrients. You're getting enough protein. You're exercising enough. This study probably isn't going to pertain to you. Now, you might get some benefits by changing a couple things. You might see improvements. But remember, these people are already on the far end of the spectrum in terms of health. When it comes to risk factor for disease. So you want to look at, for training studies, would be a good example. A lot of training studies, they require that you're able to squat at least your body weight. You're able to deadlift at least 1.5 times your body weight. So like, these are good things. You have to have been resistance trained for a year to 2 years. So we now know that as an intermediate lifter, this probably pertains to us. So we can probably take this information and try to utilize it in our own lives. This is why it's important not to just read an abstract. Because the abstract's going to tell you kind of the results, their interpretation of the results, and a little bit about how many people were in the study. And so I know that can be difficult because we don't always have access to the full studies. PubMed is a phenomenal resource, and it's wonderful. But there's a lot of stuff that PubMed doesn't have. As a student still, I'm very blessed to have access to a wealth of information of research articles. And as an undergraduate student at USF, I was extremely blessed that Dr. Bill Campbell and the rest of the staff over there are very, very big on being able to read, interpret, and understand research. So I've had a very good base for where I'm at. And I'm still not the best by any means. But I have a very good base, thankfully. And I can attribute that to the school and the professors in which I was educated by. But the abstract, it is very easy to take a look at the abstract and to take something out of that the research doesn't necessarily say. And the abstract might not tell you everything that the research does say. It's very easy to wean things out. One of the other big things in research is that new research breeds research. If you have a good study and something important happens, normally what you're going to see is that other people are going to start replicating those studies. Other people are going to try and do the same thing to see if they get the same results. One study proves nothing. One study is an idea booster. It means that we now have an idea. We now have something to take into consideration and to start working towards to see if this is going to reign true. We're going to see this in every study, and a great example would be an outlier. So for the vast majority of the data, it's going to be within this normal range. Every once in a while, you're going to have an outlier, someone out here or someone out there, something that maybe, something happened, or there's a variable that wasn't checked, or for whatever reason they have a different response to the treatment or the intervention, whatever it might be. Studies can do this too. The same thing can happen with an entire study, and that is why we replicate studies. If a study has been replicated and the results have not been replicated, that means that the initial study could be an outlier. I would much rather look at multiple studies that back up the same thought process than look at one study against multiple studies. Multiple studies prove that it works for the population, right? That it's going to reign true for the majority of the population. One study, maybe for a small percentage of the population, it helps. Maybe it doesn't help at all. Maybe it was just an outlier and there was something weird going on. Maybe they didn't control for the variables enough. Maybe they had a diet study with exercise within it, and with just a diet, the same thing never happened, right? They weren't able to replicate the same results. So maybe it was the other portion of it. Maybe it was the exercise that was what made the big difference in that study. These are all things to look at. I cannot encourage you enough to start looking up more data when you hear very, very large claims made. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. That reigns true. Be skeptical. Like, really be skeptical, because this is your life we're talking about. This is your health, and that's nothing to take lightly. Not only the amount of time that you have on this earth, but the quality of that time is important. So please take the time, dive a little bit deeper, get in depth with the studies. Don't let some superficial abstract or a claim that somebody else makes determine your beliefs on it. Like, do the research. It's not hard. We have Google. We have PubMed. Like, we can delve more into this. The wealth of information at our fingertips is incredible. So please, I hope that this helps you to sort of get a better idea of how to read research, how to look at things, and how to understand what it is and interpret what it is that you're looking at. And I hope that that helps you to make better decisions and more informed decisions when it comes to your own health. So, if you watch What the Health, say, hey, what the research? Anyways, guys, I hope you have a great week. This is Stephen Bogren here, Pro Physique. See ya!